Thanks so much, Miss Eunice. And thank you, Birmingham Freedom Fest, for bringing together a group of dynamic young activists to discuss the current state of social justice, equality, and racism in our country today. Hi, my name is Jordyn Hudson, and I will serve as your moderator. I'm a rising senior in high school and the founder and CEO of Shape the Culture, a digital platform that highlights the good work young people are doing across the country. I'm so excited about our conversation today on the subject of passing the torch, a dialogue about how the next generation is leading the charge to equality and fairness for all. Freedom Fest, please join me in warmly welcoming our panel of outstanding young leaders. First, we have Jordyn Davis. Jordyn is a 2020 graduate of Morehouse College and will attend Columbia University as a graduate student this fall. He is the host of the podcast Poppin Policies. Next is Austin Smith. Austin is a rising junior and civil engineering major at Alabama A&M University, where he is a member of the Gamma Phi chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Austin is an organizer for the Doug Jones for Senate campaign and a student organizer for HBCU Students for Biden. We also have Caleb Neverson. Caleb is a rising sophomore at Lawson State Community College. He currently serves as chairman of the NAACP's Youth Council. Caleb is also the founder and CEO of a political consulting firm, the Jordyn Consulting Group. Chad Freeman is our next panelist. Chad is a recent graduate of the University of Alabama at Birmingham, where he received a degree in African American Studies and History. He is also an organizer and an active member of Woke Vote, an organization dedicated to structural justice surrounding voter education and voter registration. And last, but certainly not least, we have Kameryn Thigpen. Kameryn is a senior at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, where she is studying political science. She is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Kameryn is an advocate for human rights and the rights of the incarcerated. Well, what's up, everyone? How are you all doing? It is so good to see you all, and I'm really excited about this panel and know we are going to have a great conversation. So let's get down to business and begin discussing the subject of our panel, Passing the Torch. Our community recently lost two civil rights icons, C.T. Vivian and Congressman John Lewis. We stand on the shoulders of these giants. As we honor and reflect on their lives and legacies, would you all share the impact that Congressman Lewis and C.T. Vivian made on you as young activists? Chad, Austin, and Jordyn, please take this question. Chad, you go first.
Well, Reverend C.T. Vivian was huge for me because he was one of the first people that I ever learned about that was doing civil rights work before the civil rights era. His first sit-in dates back all the way to 1947. So that was amazing for me to see someone take lead at such an early age and at a time where it wasn't really popular. And with Congressman Lewis, I think all of us can attest to him telling us, about good trouble, especially considering when you look at a lot of our young activists are being arrested by the police for peaceful protests and even NFL players like Kenny Stills. And so it kind of reminds us that, we can still be activists and fight for change, and getting into a little good trouble is okay. So we lost two giants with them, and we will venerate them forever.
Jordyn?
When I think of Reverend C.T. Vivian and Congressman Lewis, I think of two words, and that's sacrifice and strategy. And I think those are two words that I think most young activists should live by now. We should be dedicated to strategizing and figuring out new ways to kind of disrupt and dismantle systemic oppression. But we should also be sacrificial in our approach as well. So not just directing people, but also standing on the front lines with those who are fighting the good fight. And like Chad said, get into some good trouble. We lost definitely some pillars in our Black community, but I am grateful for the reminders and the lessons that they have left. And I will cherish the lessons, especially from Congressman Lewis, because I got a chance to meet him a couple of times. But from both, I will cherish their lessons for the rest of my life.
And Austin?
Thank you for the question, Jordyn. For me, Congressman John Lewis was a very pivotal person in my activist journey. He is famous for the phrase "get trouble," in which I try to live up to it each and every day. But him and C.T. Vivian are two big pillars in the civil rights movement that are truly remarkable individuals. And they basically taught me how to be the man that I am today, that's not afraid to speak up, and show out for the right cause. So that's how those two really make me feel.
Thank you all for sharing. As young people, do you feel we've been a part of the discussion to bring about equity and justice in our communities? Where's our entry point, or how can we even get a seat at the table as the solutions are being developed to address the problem? Kameryn and Caleb, would you answer this question? Kameryn, would you go first?
I think that it requires a acknowledgement of human rights within governmental structures. So I think a new declaration of human rights that includes all people is necessary. I think getting rid of systems that we know oppress people and replacing it with systems that actually help people to serve people's humanity is the first step.
Caleb?
Yes. Well, first, I believe that young people really haven't had a seat at the table. However, in recent times, I've seen that young people have made an effort to make their voices heard and bring make their own seat at the table. I believe many of us can attest to the reality that the older generation has told us that we should wait our turn, and we should wait until we have more experience, and we should wait until we are more knowledgeable of what's going on. However, the older generation is trying to tell the younger generation to be quiet, who grew up on Nook If You Buck. A generation is now trying to stand up and pretty much make their own seat at the table. Young people are creating their own platforms, and I believe that's how we can take a step forward into getting a seat at the table and making our voices heard.
Thank you. So what are the challenges in young people being engaged? But most importantly, how do we overcome those challenges? Caleb and Austin, please share your thoughts. Caleb, would you please start us off?
Yes. Again, I believe one of the challenges is being told that, again, we should wait our turn. And we can overcome those challenges by creating our own platform. One great aspect and one great platform that we have that many civil rights foot soldiers did not have during the civil rights movement is social media. We can use our platform on social media to create our own platform and advocate for things that we believe should be done. I believe this is something that we can do to continue to stay engaged and, of course, let our voices be heard on issues that are being silent.
So yeah, the biggest challenges that young people have to be engaged are: number one, time; number two, organization; number three, passion; and then the fourth and biggest one is governmental structure. Why I say governmental structure as the biggest one is because the government has the opportunity to take our voice away and to give us our voice. And the biggest voices that we have is voting. And there are things such as voter suppression, disenfranchisement, and gerrymandering that affect our use of having that voice to make sure that we are engaged. So the ways that we combat that is that, unfortunately, we have to go out there and bite the bullet and try and go vote at all costs, no matter the hurdle, no matter the circumstance, so that we can get those that make it hard for us to be engaged in the process out of office and replace them with ones that want to see more young people engaged in the process.
Thank you for that. If racial injustice could be addressed exactly like how you wanted, what would a just and equitable society look like to you? Jordyn, what do you think?
Yeah, that's good. That's a really great question. I think equality looks different for every group. I think most of the times we're pushing or looking for equality when we should be looking for equity. So for me as a Black man, equality may look different for a Black woman. So for me, I think it's just really getting down to the fact that everyone's equality looks different, and we should be listening to all groups, and all voices should have a seat at the table so that we can come up with a consensus and a solution as to how we want to progress this nation forward. So I think it doesn't look one way, but we must involve all groups and all voices must be heard in order to address it head on.
Kameryn, what about you?
I think that it requires a acknowledgement of human rights within governmental structures. So I think a new declaration of human rights that includes all people is necessary. I think getting rid of systems that we know oppress people and replacing it with systems that actually help people to serve people's humanity is the first step.
As a follow-up to that question, what do you think are our next steps in terms of getting to a more equitable and just world? And how can we get there? Chad, how do we get there?
That's a great question. I think the first step that needs to be taken is we need to change the way that our education systems teach our youth. A lot of the times what we realize is younger students that are like in middle school and high school, they don't really know much about struggle and they don't know about the injustices in the world. So by the time they hit college, it's like they're learning for the first time for the most part. So we have to go back and retell those stories that we were told when we were taking social studies in class. You know, I can remember being young and I never learned about Stokely Carmichael. I never learned about Fannie Lou Hamer. I never learned about any of these great African-American leaders. And it was because I was deprived by the education system. So until we address why there was voter suppression during Jim Crow, why Jim Crow happened in the first place, why the civil rights movement was necessary, then those next steps are going to be impossible to take. But I think the first step should be education.
And some of the people watching this panel are still in high school. They might be experiencing some of the same issues of racism and inequity in their school environment. So what advice do you have for students who want to advocate for equity in their schools? Austin?
Yeah, the biggest way that if you are still in high school today, the biggest way that you can do it is first by going to, number one, your local school board. Number two, going to your state school board. And number three, going up to the highest of offices, going up to the governor. If you are in a state that is like ours that doesn't address the racial issues that we have in the school system. So the things that you have to do now is organize a group, make sure you get friends of friends, fill it up with people that are passionate about that issue, especially in education. We see it today in the school to prison pipeline. We see it today with the governor that builds more prisons than she does schools. And so the biggest way that you can combat it in high school is by just being engaged, organizing, building a plan, and then going and presenting that plan to your school board, to your state school board of representatives, and all the way up to the superintendent and governor.
Jordyn?
Absolutely. Great question. I think what you can do now to create equity in your own school environment is to just be vocal, whether that's writing a letter, whether that is meeting with school leadership. I think there are many ways to tackle it, but you have to find which action is needed in that moment. Also, if you want to create change, even though you cannot vote, as a high school student, there are still ways to be politically engaged and politically active. So right now, the Voting Rights Advancement Act is stuck in the Senate, and we need everybody's voice to be heard on it. So I need everybody to call their senators and tell them to support the Voting Rights Advancement Act because the Senate Majority Leader is blocking it from even having a vote. And so things like that, just being aware of what's going on politically and how it affects you, I think that's the most pointed way to get involved and to create an equitable society.
And Caleb?
There are many ways that young people can get engaged in high school. And again, it's using your resources and seeing what's appropriate to use during that time. Speaking with school leadership, partnering with organizations such as the NAACP, and find ways to get others active in whatever it is that you're passionate about. If it's something that you're passionate about, find a way to grow your platform and get other people interested and get other people on fire for the same thing that you are.
And this is our last question, but it is an important question. In light of all that is going on right now, and with the 2020 election quickly approaching us, can you all provide some ways young people can use their voices to help shape the culture and the future of our country today? I think it would be beneficial for the viewers to hear from the entire panel. So Caleb, I'll actually start with you.
That is a great question. A while ago, I had the opportunity to speak at a rally, and I spoke on the importance of having every voice lifted. And as a result of that, I referred back to the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice. And it is important that we exercise our amendment right and register to vote. And this is one of the most powerful tools that we have. If we exercise our constitutional right to vote, we will then have every voice lifted. And one of the beautiful things that I've seen is not only have we seen the voice of the marginalized or African Americans lifted, we've seen the voice of white Americans lifted. We've seen the voice of Latino Americans lifted. We've seen the voice of Hispanic Americans lifted. And I believe this is where we can all come together unified and have every voice lifted. And we can only do that if we continue to boost voter turnout on November, and if we all come together.
Kameryn?
Yes, I think that it's important for young people to just educate each other and even their households and their social groups on the importance of research. We're living in a time now where research is so available. Like, we have Google, we have different news outlets. I think it's important that young people, even if you can't vote yet, I think it's important to start using the media outlets to find out which issues are beneficial for you and what issues that you're passionate about, and then spreading that awareness to your families and your social group.
Austin?
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of what Cam just said. The biggest things that you can do is be educated. For the most part, we are the generation that has the ability to be educated on every single issue if we dedicate the time to it. But the biggest things that we have to worry about is also voting. In terms of, if we take a step back and we looked at a fact, and in 2018, during the midterm elections, only 36% of young people voted in that midterm election out of the many multitude of registered voters that are young. And they were typically 18 to 29-year-olds. If that voting block increases, we have the most potential to do anything that we want to do, see any law that we want to see passed, see whatever representation we want to see. If you want more Black folks in Congress, then you have the ability to go out there and vote. So you have to use that ability to go and vote, because we can't take a seat back while an older generation is trying to write the rules.
And Jordyn, I will give you the last word before we close.
Absolutely. I think going back to what everyone else said, voting is so important. It is our most sacred, basic, but so fundamental right as an American citizen. And so I would encourage everyone to vote, but also doing something that you think is worthwhile and that will contribute to a society that you can be proud of a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. That starts right now. And so if that is starting a podcast, if that's starting a blog, if that is getting on IG Live and just making your voice heard to your following, I think that is what matters and what counts, and is what is going to get us to a better society and a better world politically, and a better country politically in the coming years. And so I am optimistic for the future. And I just want to encourage all the young people to continue to take up space, especially in this digital age. We're needed. And so do not ask to be in the room, just show up and make your voice heard.
Thank you for closing us out. This ends our discussion. Thank you, Kameryn, Chad, Austin, Caleb, and Jordyn for joining me today for this important discussion on passing the torch and how the next generation is leading the charge to equality and fairness for all. We've had a fantastic conversation. I hope that every young person around the world has been inspired by each of you and is ready to pick up the torch and lead. I know that I am. But thank you again to the Birmingham Freedom Fest for seeing it necessary to hear the thoughts of young people. We hope you all enjoy the rest of the festival, and remember that to do your part to make a positive impact in your community and shape the culture.